I actually grew up in California. I was a military brat. Dad was in the Army. I went to college in California, majored in criminal justice and sociology, and ended up going from there to the Oakland Police Department, which is a police department in the Bay Area. I was a police officer for about 3 years, and then sort of got it into my head that I wanted to see the world a little bit, and applied for the Central Intelligence Agency. It was during the Reagan buildup of the early 80s. And lucky enough, after a year of applying, I was able to get in and got into the CIA for 22 years. And then from there, I went into, decided to get into the corporate world and got into Microsoft in 2002. And spent my first year running executive protection for Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer at the time for the first year because I had a bit of background in that. And then as I found out at Microsoft and other companies, there tends to be a lot of reorganization. And a year later, my then boss called me into the office and said, Mike, I'm leaving. There's been a reorg, and you're now in charge of all of physical security. You're the Chief Security Officer, so enjoy yourself. So I ended up as head of security for Microsoft, or the Chief Security Officer. I think there were several factors that contributed to that. I think one of them being timing. It was just the right timing for them to look for somebody in that position. The other thing was, though, I think I had built up a resume in terms of my time in law enforcement as well as with the CIA, with a diverse set of skills when it came to security, intelligence, analysis, executive protection, and then plus knowledge of cultures and diversity, because we were expanding in the company into a lot of different markets. And I think all of those things kind of contributed to them looking at me as somebody who could actually run physical security for the company. I think the year I spent in executive protection also gave me a bit of an entree to the people in the C-suite, and was able to actually establish a bit of a reputation there in terms of organizing and leading and actually getting things done in that realm. And I think that also helped as well in the company making the decision to move me into the Chief Security Officer position. So I think the reason why we embarked on this G SOG strategy, again, there are several reasons behind it. The first was we took a look at our existing security infrastructure at the time. What we realized was that the company was really starting to morph into a truly global entity. When I joined Microsoft in 2002, we had maybe 40,000 employees globally. Within a span of a couple of years, that had doubled exponentially. We started going into China and India and to other markets. And taking a strategic look at our operations, I realized, number one, we didn't have the bandwidth to cover that exponential growth of Microsoft. And then number two, we certainly didn't have the technology to really expand with the company. And so it was really a strategic decision based on the fact that if we were truly going to scale, and we had always had a global mandate, we just didn't have that global bandwidth. And so the first thing we did was just think about how we were going to scale to the growth of Microsoft. So we did a zero-based study, soup to nuts of all the technologies that we had. I mean, at one point we had maybe 15 what we call life safety control centers. A lot of those were built in the mid-90s with probably the best of the technology available at the time, but they were allowed to atrophy and to morph, and there was no strategy behind the technology. So when we did the zero-based study, we found out that we had 60 different technologies that had been incorporated into the technology portfolio of our global security organization. And it was through no fault of anybody, it was just that there was no strategy before the technology. And typically, people will look for the bright, shiny objects. They'll go to places like ISC West or ASIS, and they'll say, well, I like that particular widget. Let me add that widget to our control center, and that's what happened with us. So once we had done the study, the recommendation out of the study was that we develop these 3 operations centers that would be the best of Microsoft technology as well as partner products that would fit with our strategy. The idea being that each of the G SOCs would have their own areas of operation. So one for the Americas out of our Redmond campus, main headquarters campus outside Seattle. One in near London to cover Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and then one in Hyderabad, India to cover Asia Pacific. But the kicker was that in addition to them being able to monitor and respond globally in their areas of operation, we built in interoperability so that if any one of the GSOCs went down, earthquake or some other catastrophic event, that either, say, Hyderabad or the UK could take over all life safety operations, leverage cameras internationally, lock down doors, radio over IP to dispatch officers, one true common picture on a common platform of information sharing. So true continuity of operations. And we realized that if we did not embark upon that, we were not going to be able to really do well by Microsoft as it was growing. And so those were the main drivers behind why we embarked on the GSOC strategy and the GSOC implementation. At its base level, they are responding to calls for assistance globally. They can monitor anything from a theft or somebody locked out of their office at a lower level to a terrorism incident globally or a tsunami like we've had handled before. Typically, our GSOCs monitor what's happening around the world. If there's an event that goes down, like the recent missing airliner, obviously the GSOC needs to be employed to take a look at whether we had any assets on that particular airline, and that's just one example. They're also there to kind of act as our eyes and ears in the regions. So the way we are organized at Microsoft, we have regional security managers located throughout the world. Their job is to drive our strategies in the region. In the regions. Initially, the idea for the GSOCs was to use that GSOC as a hub and then take most of our lines of business that we have back in headquarters in Redmond, whether it's investigations or executive protection or what have you, migrate them in the field so that they could be regionally based assets. And that was sort of the part of the impetus of the strategy. But in essence, the GSOC really is that one-shop stop for a Microsoft employee. Whether they're traveling, even if they're on vacation, what have you, they know that they can call upon us to respond to any incident, whether it's an accident, whether it's a terrorism man-made incident, or whether it's a natural catastrophe. We have really worked on creating trust with our senior executives in the C-suite in order to get buy-off for the GSOCs, as well as some of the other initiatives we've been able to execute over the years in our global security organization. How we've done this, well, I think at a very minimal level, it takes a lot of shoe leather and knocking on doors. When I first took over as head of executive protection, in one sense it gave me a bit of an advantage because I had entree to the COO and CEO and CFO and all of these other folks that naturally are involved in that sort of higher level of executive protection. But a lot of it was really literally knocking on doors. As we embarked upon this GSOC strategy, part of it was to get them to know me, Mike Howard, and my organization as business enablers and trusted advisors. We wanted to get away from the normal perception of some business leaders that we are guns, guards, and gates. And certainly we can respond to life safety incidents, but we wanted them to think of us in a different way. If they started to think of us in a different way, more as a business partner, we'd have better luck in getting those initiatives like the GSOC launched. And so being able to just introduce myself, talk to them about my background, what my team's background is all about, and saying that, yes, we can do all the life safety protection, but we're here to help you enable business. Being able to talk the language of business and understanding their business strategies helped a long way. Letting them know that if we could get the GSOCs built, then it would really significantly affect their ability to conduct business, say in the COO's world, as they're conducting events globally that we could monitor and make sure that they're safe or just expedite things or what have you. So that was one big piece of it. Certainly, I think the idea of making them look at you in a strategic light was the other part of the pie. So knocking on the doors was the first step, introducing yourself, but then making sure that we had built that business case. That zero-based study I talked about was really the very first time that this organization, which had been in existence for 20 years, had ever developed, built, and delivered a business case to the senior executives in the company. And it was sort of a shift in the way people thought about us in the company as we presented that. That particular zero-based study, it took a better part of a year to get the buy-in. It went up to the CEO's office, Steve Ballmer, and I was the one that pitched it, and he accepted it. And so to me that was validation of the fact that all along the line we had achieved our goal of looking of looking like we were true business enablers and trusted advisors. The other thing is that I wanted to let my higher-ups understand about my team, that while we had a really good team of people that were subject matter experts in security, a lot of them come from military intelligence, law enforcement backgrounds, typical, but that all of us were invested in, again, strategically aligning to the company, getting my higher-ups to know some of my senior leaders over a period of time, letting them see them and understand that, wow, you know, these people do understand the business. They do study the 10K, you know, that comes out once a year from Microsoft. We do understand what the enterprise risks are. All those things were all part and parcel of the strategy to build the G SOCs, as well as to get other types of investments in us, which have actually borne fruit over the last 10, 11 years. We're seeing a transition, I think, in the security world now. I think 20 plus years ago, companies were looking for people with the traditional, you know, CIA, FBI, what have you, Secret Service backgrounds. Still, those are important. But, you know, to your question, I think it is just as important for someone to have an MBA as for someone to come in with that type of law enforcement background. I'm seeing it in drips and drabs in the industry, but there are some CSO positions that have been taken by people that don't have a traditional security background, but they understand enterprise risk or finance, and they've been hired by their companies to run security because they figure, you know, they need someone that understands business, can actually drive ROI, understands the value proposition, and then he can hire the subject matter experts for investigations or executive protection or what have you. Certainly, I think that you really have to have that mindset, and you have to drill it in. In our organization, we have a conscious strategy of studying the business of the company. For instance, one of the things that we do in our operations centers is we actually bring senior leaders. Over a period of years, we've brought senior leaders into our G SOCs, and we have given them a briefing, told them about what they do, showcased the technologies that we employ. And again, it kind of reinforces the fact that, you know, we're practicing what we do using the best of the Microsoft technology. And again, asking them as they come in, what is it we can do to support you? We understand your business needs. What can we do to support you? The regional security managers that I mentioned earlier, they have a double remit, right? The first one obviously is protecting people and assets. The second one is to really get close to the business leaders in the region and understand those strategies so that we can align properly. If you don't understand business, if you're perceived as the guns, guards, and gates and break glass in case of emergency only, then you're going to be left behind. You know, that proverbial seat at the table, you won't have that. Yeah, you know, as a CSO, I think that it's not only a good thing to do, it's a necessity for any security organization and any company to really look at the other business units as partners, as clients, as being able to add value to their particular enterprises. We have a system of incident management in our global security group at Microsoft. And over the years, that incident management entity has grown so that if a bad thing happens in the world, we bring in what we call embedded partners from finance or HR or legal, depending on what the situation is. And what we found out is that by doing that, we've established closer ties with them. But also, again, we develop those connections that we start to understand strategies of those particular organizations. I think a lot of security groups tend to silo themselves in companies. Very comfortable with the life safety and protection because that's the bread and butter. Not so comfortable with the sales and marketing or getting involved with even the IT side of the house, depending on how robust that organization is in IT. So, you know, what we found out is that you have a force multiplier effect if you have trusted allies and assets throughout the company. And you don't do that by siloing yourselves. You do that by establishing some substantive partnerships and reaching out to them, finding out what it is, again, that we can do for them, changing their mindset as to who we are and what we're all about, and then finding out that we can be of value to their particular operations. We tend to be global, right? We're a global organization at Microsoft in general, but when you get down to a micro level at global security, we're a global entity. You know, there are some entities that are out of our Redmond campus that aren't global or have very little bandwidth overseas. We might be able to help them in some of their activities overseas because we have that bandwidth. So certainly, I think you don't survive, or at least you don't thrive as a CSO or any senior executive unless you actually reach out to other folks in the company. So when we were building our business case for the G SOC, certainly we were cognizant of the fact that we needed to build something for us so that we could execute globally and protect people and assets. In and of itself, that's a great driver. But beyond that, we understood that, again, as I mentioned earlier, that our company was growing and morphing, and there are also other security entities, IT security, trustworthy computing, privacy, what have you, that are within our company. And certainly part of the strategy, I think a successful strategy if you're building a business case for a CSO, is to make sure that, yes, you have to spell out to those folks above you why you need the investment, in our case in the G SOCs and the brick and mortar and the people and the money and the IT infrastructure that goes into that. But what is the value add to the entire company? So again, you know, reaching out to different people that we in the C-suite as we were building the case, letting them know that there was, you know, what is it in the G SOC that would benefit them, that we could add to our business case and our business arguments. Certainly that was very important. And we know that because, and again, you have to sort of be forward thinking about this. You know, you can get really trapped into the mindset that, okay, we're building this G SOC just for life safety protection, not even thinking about the other businesses, yet what your operations are actually doing are impacting those other businesses. So if you can figure out how to get people to advocate for you in these other businesses and have them actually support the G SOC, in our particular case, the G SOC business case, that went a long way to getting the buy-in, you know, up at the very high levels. The other thing is that I think as a senior leader running a security organization, you really have to be strategic in your mindset. In some cases, a straight security background will tend to give you a very, I would say, tunnel vision when it comes to how to think about the company. You're thinking about security, but you're not thinking about finance or HR or legal or sales or marketing. Whereas I think in a person in my position, you've got to think really broadly about the impact of your operations on the rest of the company. That takes you out of that comfort zone of security, put you in that mindset of business and that trusted advisor. But at the same time, it gets you to start talking to the right people and having them being able to influence their peers, for instance, in the C-suite, to advocate for you. So certainly I think that's a very critical element of building a business case. We are a world-class security group at Microsoft, Global Security. I always say that we can always learn from others, so when people come over to benchmark with us, that hopefully we learn as much from them as they learn from us. That being said, I think that there are several things that we do that are quite unique. Number one, we've embarked on what we call showcasing. What we did was we took our G SOCs, we approached our sales organizations, and we said, you know, you guys are looking to have companies, public and private, come in and sign on the dotted line for a multi-year enterprise software license. Let us bring these folks into the G SOCs. Let's give them a demonstration of what we do and how we use the Microsoft products to make ourselves more efficient. If they sign on the dotted line, would you at least give us credit, if we earned it, right? If we helped sway the decision, would you give us credit for that? And it started kind of slow because the salespeople are a little bit, you know, antsy about anybody trying to, you know, maybe take their revenue, but we said it was soft dollars. And over a period of time, this has morphed into its own vertical. We have a team that globally works with our sales folks to, you know, demonstrate to enterprise clients what we do and how we do for a living, as well as my peers in the industry. This is, as my boss has told me, he's never known a corporate security group that has done that, because we've now become a virtual profit center. We actually help the company bring in more money than I have in my annual budget.
King County is one of the largest counties in the country with about 2 million population. The G SOG is an organization that allows me to bring my customers, especially the public safety customers, in to see the Microsoft technologies working in a real-world environment. Based on the innovations that the public safety organization saw when they came to the G SOG, it completely changed their vision of what SharePoint and InfoPath can do. With that, we closed a 6-year, $15 million enterprise agreement.
Another thing that we do is social media. We have purposely decided that if we have developed a certain amount of expertise and knowledge over the years that's made us successful, we want to share that with the security community. Again, not because we think we're better, but we're part of this ecosystem. We need to be sharing with our partners in the industry. So we have a Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn presence, and we leverage that for evangelizing ourselves, but also operationally we also use it as well. And that's something that I think a lot of CSOs stay away from. They're afraid of social media. When you look at demographic shifts within companies and you see a younger demographic that's used to social media, I think we need to employ that as part of our portfolio. I think the last thing is that we have worked on a governance structure within Microsoft. So my peer, Brett Arsenault, who is the CISO, and I and some others have gotten together and formed what we call the IRMC, Information Risk Management Council. And it's the governance structure of security for the company. We've had a one Microsoft security policy. We're very transparent about our strategies. We don't silo ourselves. We also have Executive Vice President support. My particular boss, Frank Brode, who's a VP in Finance, is one of our exec supporters. And we've been able to do some great things in making sure we do cross-group collaboration within the company. And in a lot of companies, the CISO and the CSO don't even talk to each other, right? Very siloed. So I think those are the main things that I think set us apart from a lot of other corporate security groups.
Yes, my background started off in law enforcement. And I worked for 2 police departments. One when I started off as a rookie police officer in the city of Honolulu. And I worked patrol duties and special weapons and tactics. Then I lateraled over to the state of Washington, a city of Redmond, where Microsoft is headquartered. I was fairly technical when I came in because I was just a student of computers. And I spent most of my time, 8 years at Redmond Police as a detective. And I did a lot of cases for the Microsoft Corporation. And I was offered a job 13 years ago, never left. And I've managed the security technology team and the investigations team currently at Microsoft. And it's been a great opportunity to work with, I think, the greatest technology company in the world, but bringing real-world solutions for the physical security industry and being a part of that as an industry thought leader and also, I would say, leading authority on integrated solutions that could help other companies efficiently run their business cost-effectively. So analog systems are still prevalent within the security industry today. And a lot of it is because it's very expensive to buy hardware and upgrades. And usually security is at the bottom of the budget barrel, especially in cash-strapped times. With respect to analog technology, when I started Microsoft 13 years ago, it was quite embarrassing for the security department that had a lot of analog technology within its operations center. More importantly, we had analog video when digital video was out and available. So we put together a business case to convert the analog video to a digital video system, and the return on investment was tenfold just by the reduction in theft and the ease of capturing video on demand instead of having an analog system. Take signals, for example. A lot of emergency signals are analog in nature, in the areas of duress alarms, panic alarms, anything that could send a signal for someone to do a response or a call. We are actually doing a project today to put all of our devices on IP. And when you have converted analog, we only have a few left, some are emergency stations, When you convert it to IP devices, then it's very easy to monitor from a electronic perspective. And I'll give you an example. It's the beauty of working at Microsoft is having the ability to understand how Microsoft looks at technology from a security system perspective. Microsoft has a solution called SCOM, so it's a System Center Operation Manager. And it's designed for IT environments to check the servers to see if they're running at maximum capacity and output, and if there's any anomalies, it will clearly show from a signal that something's wrong and it's easy to fix. So if you look at most camera systems, access control systems, any type of system today, it's really hard to monitor, especially if it's analog, without actually pressing a button to see if it works or not. So what we're working on is a pilot project to bring System Center Operation Manager to the physical security device arena. So imagine all of the physical security devices, and it's being monitored through a command portal or user interface that automatically will tell you if something's wrong. And I think this will be a game changer in the industry, but I think from when you look at analog technology today, we need to start moving towards the IP digital world sooner than later. There are a lot of security executives and leaders out there that are very concerned about cloud technology, and they're reluctant to move into the direction of cloud just because they don't understand it. And a lot of people, when they don't understand something, they either shun it or they're just concerned that it's going to be impact to their business from a risk perspective. Being at Microsoft, we're a leader in cloud technology, and a lot of our solutions that we provide are at the largest enterprise level, from government to Fortune 500 companies. And when I look at security leaders' concerns on cloud, one of the questions I ask them are, do you order stuff online? Whether it's through online shopping area, and most, 99% of them do, except for the small minority that still drive their paycheck to the bank and don't do direct deposit. But for the rest of the folks, yeah, they order online, and they feel fairly safe ordering online. Yes, there are breaches at times, but a lot of it is due to maybe some poor security protocols or operations that fail to follow a protocol to effectively lock down the environment. So specifically to cloud, if you look at access control and video, it's very hardware centric, where the systems are on premise, and most security directors don't want to change from that period. What we're doing at Microsoft is looking at ways, innovative ways, not only to reduce costs, but how can you manage terabytes or petabytes of information within the cloud. Microsoft Corporation actually is working on a strategy in the public sector area to load digital video within Azure. That's our cloud solution. And you could hold terabytes of information in there, days, years, weeks, you name it. It will scale, and it's through a middleware solution, a software solution that provides massive compression, so you can host it within the cloud and very easily without much trouble. What security directors will tell me is, well, I don't trust it. The server's not sitting on my premise, and I don't trust the security. And I call those guys the rack. They want to hug the rack. And we can understand that because they want it to be secure in their building. If you look at a lot of the attack, penetration, hacks that occur in smaller enterprises, they're not immune to being attacked on their own premise. So if you throw the infrastructure within the cloud, and it could be a hybrid cloud, it could be a private cloud that they host just for you, and you have your own rack within a very secure area, it's a secure environment. And All you have to do is go to our website, Microsoft.com, and look at the cloud security, and we have every white paper you can imagine talking about the security of the cloud. So getting back to security leaders and their concern about cloud technology, I would say do their research, look what's available out there, but it's not if cloud is going to take over. It's really when, and it's going to be sooner than later, where most of our technology will be hosted off-premise in the cloud, and that just will be the wave of the future. One of the biggest challenges I observed when I took over the physical security technology team of migrating the servers that we had on-premise was with the technical team. A lot of security professionals that are technical, they want to be the administrator for the box. And when I came in, I said, this is going to stop. We're going to have to move it to an IT-hosted environment. And it's hard for some people, and I know in a lot of security industries or organizations, there's headbutting between the director or CSO with the IT director or CISO. And I've seen instances where they'll just create their own network outside of the corporate network just for security. And that's not really the right answer in my opinion. So my biggest challenge was convincing my existing team to let go and have IT managed services, including migration to the cloud. My recommendation for security leaders that are looking to move from on-premise hosted physical security solutions to the cloud would be do your research, ask the hard questions. If any technology vendor is pushing their solution to you, ask for references. Always ask for references and call people that have implemented and ask them how successful, how easy, what's the cost. Because what I've learned over time is a lot of salespeople will overpromise and underdeliver. So one thing I always ask is who's using your stuff? How are they successful? And then give me their phone number. If they're unable to provide that, then move on. And if someone freely gives you that information to benchmark and you have a positive interaction with the people that are able to share what they do, then you should move in that direction.